Did you have a goal to be more comedy, more horror, or is there?
The goal was to try and be equal measure comedic and scary. Because it feels to us, we talked about these things at length as they were writing and as we were kind of working on this thing together, that horror comedies tend to skew one direction or the other, or be a little bit heavier in one element or another. More often than not, they're heavier in comedy. So we kind of wanted, our goal, and I think we've achieved it to a certain degree, is that those two things are at the same level.
Yeah, there was an interesting dynamic because oftentimes filmmakers are trying to get away from what they're known for. They don't want to be slotted into this one box. And so with us, the dynamic was me as the horror guy. That's what I was known for. I was really wanting to do a comedy and get away from horror. And these guys, you know, Elijah was desperate to start a horror film company. So it was almost like this sort of push and pull of like, well, it's got to be funny, remember? And then Elijah would be like, but don't forget the scares. And somewhere in between that gritted teeth sort of agreement was like, okay. And I think we did get a pretty even split. I mean, the film is really funny. You know, that's what people are telling us. And it's got moments of real tension that could sit comfortably inside a straight-up horror movie.
Sure, yeah. I think the scene that got me horror-wise or just terrified-wise is in the duct. The duct work. Crawling through there. Because claustrophobia is huge for a lot of people. And that fear of being chased by something and you can't go left or right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent.
Cool.
So the kids aspect of it, the child actors, you guys have answered a lot of questions about that. So not to hammer it too much, but Elijah, I was wondering if some of your earlier experiences, the Good Son, gave you some insight into what those kids might have been feeling when they were on the set, where you're really trying to get this is going to be scary, guys. Like, focus.
The kids who played the primary sort of lead kid roles were great. I mean, they were so great. We were never up against it with them. They were very professional and kind of knew what they were doing to service their characters, and even the kids who would, this sort of like primary Cooties kids, really got it and had fun with it. So yeah, I mean, I suppose I think there's always that sort of sense of remembering what it was like. They were super professional and easy to work with, and I think they were taking glee in it too. I mean,
Cooper, who plays Patriot, had so much fun with physicality.
He really did.
He loved it. I mean, he's like covered in blood and growling around the school. It's like a dream.
Totally.
And I think he enjoyed it. I mean, I feel like he embraced all aspects of that.
Yeah.
And stunts and like.
Totally.
So Leigh, from writing Saw and things like that, how did you end up teaming up with Ian Brennan, who created Glee? Which is
yeah, it seems a little incongruous. Well, Ian's a friend of mine. I met him through some friends in LA, and he comes from Chicago, but he'd been in New York, where I think he met Alison, and he'd been doing theater, and he was kind of a frustrated actor, and he wrote a film screenplay
which I read and gave notes on.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow. You gave notes on the original Glee script.
Wow.
And he came out to LA with
I still wish that we could see the movie version of that.
I know. Well, apparently it was a little darker.
It was so dark.
It was more like a lection or something.
Well, the first, if you remember, the pilot of that show was more like that.
Yeah, definitely.
It had a really strange dark tone to it, and it reminded me of Election.
Yeah.
They went in a very different direction.
Yeah.
That first pilot definitely felt like it was closer to the way he described it.
Yeah, I mean, it was really perfect. That pilot in the first season was so great. But I think he came out to LA and gave his movie script for Glee to somebody, and they gave it to Ryan Murphy at the gym. It was the first example in history of somebody going up to someone and saying, hey, can you read this script? And they actually read it and like it. And they ended up making the TV show. So when I met him, he had just started working on Glee. It had just gone to air. And so we were kind of hanging out as friends all the time. But he's such a funny person in real life that I was always thinking, if I'm ever going to write a comedy, I'm going to do it with Ian. I'd love to team up and basically take the credit for his great funny lines. And then I heard the idea for Cooties, and I was like, well, basically, if you took Glee and Saw and put it in a blender and made a smoothie, the smoothie would be Cooties. Like, that is basically the perfect combination of those two things. So it just seemed like this real synergy of like, great idea, Ian, let's do it. And it all kind of worked out. And it's good.
I was wondering, what do you guys think that the setting here at the Stanley adds to seeing the movie here?
Well, there's an atmosphere. I mean, certainly the Stanley Hotel itself has got this great history. It's the connection to The Shining. It's haunted. So atmospherically, there's something really special about it. And the fact that the entire film festival takes place here at the hotel, everyone's staying here, there's something very kind of all-consuming and intimate about it. And it's a group of, the attendees are a mixture of filmmakers and writers and lovers of horror. So it's this real celebration, like a sort of celebratory vibe. That for us, we were really excited about bringing Cooties here. There's a new version of the film. We've shot a new ending. It's different from what we premiered at Sundance. So prior to releasing the film in September, we really wanted to bring it out to people again. And it just seemed to fit so well that this would be like the place to show it.
And viewing it with this audience last night, how's that different from other times you've watched it?
It's only the second time I've seen it with an audience. Actually.
Right. Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
But I mean, as you said, it's they're so ready to have a good time. This is like half a festival, half a party, it's like a real party. So people are just in the mood, and there's just no better time. It's kind of like screening films in the midnight section of the Toronto Film Festival or something. You get these people that are just ready to have fun. And so it was awesome.
Any of you had creepy moments here at the Stanley since you've been there?
This time around, no, but last year I did.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I'm determined to. I'm jealous that you had those creepy experiences.
Yeah, well, there were a couple of ghost hunters who led us on a tour of the building that we actually screened the movie in. And last year, we had this tour, and that building is the most haunted building on the premises. And there's a number of ghosts in there. And we sat in this one room, and they talked about this girl, Lucy, this ghost of this young girl. And we turned out the lights, and it was very interesting. He placed a flashlight on the table, and the flashlight started moving on its own, and it was turning on and off on its own.
Whoa!
It was great. It was great.
Tomorrow night we're going over there with a flashlight, sitting in the room and saying, "Lucy, do it again."
We even did that thing where you turn a radio dial and it's almost like an EVP thing, where you ask questions, and as you turn the dial, you can hear things come through the static. And we literally heard words. Now, obviously, some of this is the enthusiasm of wanting something to happen, so your perception is certainly skewed. But fuck it was fun. Even if that is the case, it was really fun.
I can hear a ghost coming up after 5, an hour of Creed. That's on WKXY, the home of rock in Denver. You're like, oh my god, it's Lucy. She's a rock DJ.
Who loves Creed?
And a block of an hour.
WKXY, the home of rock in Denver, loves them.
Have you noticed any other differences from last year besides not having a creepy experience? In the fest itself?
I feel like I've only been here, we just got in yesterday, so I can't tell you.
Sure.
The immersion game is bigger this year. There's a lot of new elements that Landon has brought into the festival. But it also has that same vibe as last year, which is great. We sort of vowed last year that we'd come every year because it's just awesome. There's no festival like it.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's so good.
Allison, so I'm sure again, this is probably something you get a lot. These gentlemen have been immersed in horror for just a long time, and very, very spectacular, successful work. And you were supremely creepy in Snowpiercer. But how was it stepping into this world of comedic, but horror?
It was great. It was great. I was very excited to get to do. I mean, I love discovering new techniques and new things to sort of learn about in terms of character development and just working in different ways. And this was it was a joy to work with everybody and to get to do something new.
What was the most valuable resource that you took advantage of in terms of just kind of becoming that character in that horror movie?
Yeah, it's just the script.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was written that way. I discovered who she was. I mean, she's so clear. So in the midst of everything, it was just a matter of sticking to that.
We were also really lucky in the sense that because it was essentially one primary location, we shot at the school for 4 weeks, we were allowed the luxury of shooting most of the film in sequence. So a lot of the self-discovery that we all made with our characters, in addition to what was scripted, and we experienced that in real time. So by the time that we actually got to where the movie shifts more into the tone of a horror film, we had already done all of this work to get there, and then that became our reality. Because really the second to third act kind of takes that turn. And that was super fun, because we'd spent all this time as sort of teachers in an odd situation with a lot of comedy, and then thrust into something far darker. And we kind of did that in real time. Yeah, and that's a real tonal shift in the movie when that happens.
A very poignant moment. Were you surprised in this? I mean, you'd seen the screening before with the audience last night. Was there a different reaction in any of them?
Well, I think what was interesting about last night is that because the movie is so funny up until that point, people immediately laughed and cheered when it happened, and then realized after that it wasn't meant to be funny, which I thought was kind of wonderful. Like, the initial reaction is, right. And the air kind of goes out of the room, but that's important. So that it totally worked, but it was really interesting to see where the audience wanted it to go, and then realized that it wasn't what they thought it was going to be.
It did mirror those real life awkward moments where you don't know how to react.
Yeah,
I caught myself doing the same thing. Like, and of course, there's so much inappropriateness in the whole movie as far as the kids and all that stuff.
Sure,
over the top, ridiculous stuff. I love the finger on the bicycle wheel.
That's got a great reaction last night. That was awesome.
But yeah, it kind of helped me deal with some of those awkward moments. That's like
So we got the axe.
Dang it! Did you get the little wind up? Did you?
I just had one last. We had talked to Carrie and John immediately before you guys, and asked something embarrassing or strange about the production, and we were supposed to ask you, Leigh, about Mad Max and how maybe it doesn't need volume to be narrated correctly.
Yeah, Mad Max. Well, I think they're talking about the time that I was in Amsterdam, and my friends who were ruffians and rapscallions took me to one of those hash bars, and I wasn't at the time, nor really now, really experienced with pot, so I was fairly, stoned very quickly, and I looked over and there was a TV showing Mad Max on silent. And I just sat there and did all the lines from the movie. I think that's what they're referring to.
That sounds right.
I did like 3/4 of the movie, and it became this thing. Like, all these people were gathered around. All these like stoned Swedish people were like, "That's amazing, yeah, he can do the movie." And I can do all the lines. There's not a great deal of dialogue in Mad Max, but I've watched the film so many times, I can pretty much do it all. It's a dubious skill, a sign of a wasted youth. Really.
Are you going to be doing more acting after this? I know you've been in several in smaller parts.
I'd like to. I mean, it depends on other people. I have to write stuff to get acting roles, and then put myself in it. And even I'm skeptical about putting myself in it.
Oh my God.
These guys actually get roles. People call them up and say, "Hey, can you please be in this?" I have to write a whole movie.
I think that's going to change.
Yeah, I think after everyone sees this.
Really?
I just want to see Doug come back.
Yeah.
I would watch
spin-off.
This time,
for sure.
it's just him in a bathroom.
Or a prequel. I want to know why he's the way he is.
I think that he just has almost like Asperger's. I think he just doesn't know how to relate to people at all.
I think he's a bit Asperger's.
Yeah, and he just has this real... I think that what he thinks is funny is
severe
dark.
brain damage in the emotional center.
Well, he had a lawn dart in his head when he was a kid that knocked something out.
Is that a real book? Had I known a conversation?
No, but I do love that moment because you were talking earlier about how you sum up the characters very quickly. I think that book is really the one that you like.
How did you find it?
Yeah,
Who wrote it? Who wrote a book titled "How to Have a Normal Conversation"?
That sounds like you talked about it. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
The Shining is going on the TV. Cheers, man.